Good morning, everybody. Welcome to an all-new episode of the Chronic Riff Podcast. It's your old pal, John S. Drew here. It is March 18th, 2018, and I hope you're getting over that hangover if you celebrated a little too much for St. Patrick's Day yesterday. But I'm here bright and early because I was a good boy and didn't celebrate too much. One can of Guinness, I was a good boy. And I'm back with an all-new in-review episode here, and it's a big one. We're going to be covering quite a lot, from movies, television, books, music, and we've even got commentary again. And just before we get started here, this week's coffee mug also comes from the Mad Monk, thanks to Keith DeCandido. I forget at what point it was a birthday or a Christmas gift, but much appreciated. Still love it after all these years. Well over 20, 25 years I've had this mug. So thank you, Keith, for that. I'm not going to waste a lot of time because this might run over an hour, so stay tuned just in case, because we've got a lot to cover here. It's just me commenting on it, so things might move along. But before I do, I just really want to cover just a couple of quick things here. Things that, unfortunately, if you're listening to the audio podcast, you're not going to appreciate as much, because this is really something for Facebook Live. First off, let me tilt over here, and you'll see something new on the wall behind me here, is that sign, and I'm going to lean back. No, this way. There you go. I got to get used to my directions. But anyway, I got this at the Hallmark store last week, and it's basically a Batcave sign. It says what happens in the Batcave stays in the Batcave. And, well, I don't know. Maybe it's true. I guess it all depends on if you ask Dr. Wortham about that. Now, the other thing, too, for weeks, you've been looking in the back here. You see some of my pop culture type stuff that I've got here. And one thing that some people have asked me about is the Xenomorph from the, which movie is it? Independence Day. Well, it's more than just a figure, actually. It turns out that if you... He doesn't like the light. He gets very cranky when I put on the light on him, right? The scary part is, I got this thing, gosh, now it's got to be going on about 20 years ago, maybe a little less than 20 years ago, from my father-in-law, who, when, he figured out that I was a pop culture fiend, anytime that he would find something online, or not online, but like at, area sales and things, he would go and purchase it for me. So he shows up with this thing. Now, I liked Independence Day, but I wasn't that big of a fan. But here it is, nearly 20 years later. I've still got the thing. But here's the scary part. I've never changed the batteries in 20 years. It's not like I do this very often. But batteries are still good. Thing is still running well. And now every once in a while, I let it get out and get a little bit of exercise like I just did now. So anyway, we've got ourselves a packed episode of reviews today, and I want to get started here with our own Dan Persons, who's going to be talking to us about the new Justice League movie that just came out on DVD. He didn't get a chance to review it here on the Rift originally because, well, we weren't around when Justice League came out. We were, I was. Up in the air about doing it. So here he is now taking a look at Justice League on DVD.
I'm Dan Persons, movie reviewer for Hour of the Wolf. There is a moment in Justice League, which is now out on home video and on demand, when a Russian family living in the shadow of a shuttered nuclear reactor, more on that later, has their home besieged by a swarm of Mothmen. During this, there's a shot where a young girl reaches up and pulls down a can of bug spray from a shelf. And it was a full 30 seconds before I realized, oh, that's a joke. Now, I don't particularly consider myself the most acute of intellects, but I think I'm pretty good at picking out humorous moments when they present themselves. So the fact that I was debating whether or not I should have been laughing at that moment can only mean that director Zack Snyder is once again working at the top of his form, taking something that should be fun and exciting and sapping all the life out of it until what's left is a mass of computer-generated bombast glazed with shades of inky black. It's always been clear that DC has been trying to model their most recent films in the format of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, with everything leading up to Justice League being DC's Avengers. Turns out the replication is so blatant that it's kind of embarrassing. Joss Whedon contributed to the script, and his facility with wit and character show up here and there, but not enough. The villain, Steppenwolf, voiced by Charon Hines, and computer-generated on the screen, sports Loki-like horns, seeks a trio of magical widgets that will permit him world conquest like Loki, and is accompanied by that swarming phalanx of Mothmen, who are not unlike the Chitauri. Of course, the finale has to see the Justice League teaming up to kick Mothman Tuchus, although since the throwdown is set in that abandoned nuclear facility rather than a teeming Manhattan, the battle loses a certain resonance. That one besieged family has to substitute, along with the admittedly amusing sight of Superman airlifting an entire apartment building out of harm's way. The irony is that while the Avengers movies function as culmination, all the individual Marvel movies preceding them, leading up to the explosive action of an Avengers team-up, Justice League struggles to level the DC universe up to some kind of franchise baseline, a kind of reassurance that things are getting back to normal. Superman, played by Henry Cavill, and whose digitally airbrushed upper lip didn't bother me quite as much as it did everybody else, doesn't kill anybody. Batman, as portrayed by Ben Affleck, has a bit more spring in his step than he did in Batman v Superman, and is teamed up, the brave and the bold style, with a youthful, novice Flash played by Ezra Miller, who is unabashedly styled as Peter Parker to Bruce Wayne's Tony Stark. And I kind of liked Jason Momoa's burly, confident spin to Aquaman, very Chris Hemsworth-like. Okay, I gotta stop this. Let me just note that Gal Gadot is Wonder Woman again, and I don't think she's used quite as well as she could be. I'm looking forward to her getting back to her own films. And Ray Fisher is Cyborg, and that's it. He's Cyborg. He's fine. Thing is, for all that Snyder seems to be conceding that the DC universe is better served when it isn't awash in objectivism, he's still Zack Snyder. And for all the action and spectacle and quips, a certain stolidness accompanies his efforts. On paper, Justice League promises a serviceable superhero exercise. Not more than that, but that could have been enough. In execution, though, the film still disappoints. For Hour of the Wolf, I'm Dan Persons, hashtag ITMFA.
All right, here's the thing. When it came to the Justice League movie, and I agree with Dan entirely. In fact, I find the irony of Joss Whedon being brought in to, finish the film when Zack Snyder had to bow out funny because, again, there's Joss Whedon who did the Avengers movies. And the fact is, when it comes to DC and Marvel, there's always been this whole one-upmanship of concepts with them, whether it be, Spider-Man for Marvel, and then along the lines comes Firestorm for DC. Their troubled teen who has an issue, but now he's got an adult guiding him as well, as opposed to Spider-Man who's going it alone. There's always that one-upmanship, and DC is trying to one-up, but they're trying to do it by cutting corners, because Justice League should have been further down the line. We should have had some more movies establishing characters, because half of Justice League is spent establishing Aquaman, Flash, and Cyborg. And sadly, because of it, the characters aren't given the kinds of backgrounds they really should have. I mean, to me, Cyborg is one of my favorite characters. And he's, as Dan says, serviceable. He's there. And it's cool to see. Great special effects when they worked. But no, it's just not the same. It's not the same. The only one who actually comes out of this actually working well in the entire movie, as far as I'm concerned, is Wonder Woman, because we already had the Wonder Woman movie establish her. The other day, the Avengers, the last trailer came out for the movie, and my kids were so excited at school that I was like, all right, if we get our work done, if we finish everything at the end of each period, we'll watch the trailer and we can talk about it if you want. Gave them 5 minutes. They were thrilled. And when they saw Black Panther on the screen, everybody was cheering. Because why? Because we had Black Panther. I mean, if it had been just a continuation from Winter Soldier and the Avengers, fine, it would have been nice. Hey, there's Black Panther. But we had that movie that really set him up, really made him, firmly established in the MCU, so that when you saw him, you were excited. You knew this is good, and you better not blow this, Marvel, and like have him being a sideline character. But from the scenes we see, I seriously doubt it. That was the problem, though, because, all right, Superman, yeah, he had one movie, then he had another one where he's sharing the screen with Batman. Batman, forget, at this point now, anybody can play Batman is DC's attitude. I mean, the fact that they're dicking around with Ben Affleck, and he's dicking around with whether or not he's going to do the role, I'm tired of it. I really, really hate the idea that they've let Batman go the way they have, because their attitude is anybody can put on the cowl, which is sad. Flash, I didn't care for him, to be perfectly honest. I didn't care for the whole, infantiling him. Infantiling, that's the word. Aquaman loved. I loved Aquaman. I think actually he's better than Chris Hemsworth, Jason Momoa. I just like the whole, because I from The Brave and the Bold, the whole thing with Aquaman. And Cyborg, like I said, disappointed that he didn't get as big a screen time, and he could have if we'd already established him in his own movie. But DC certainly wasn't, well, I shouldn't say that. They took a risk with Suicide Squad, and I actually thought that was one of the better ones in the DC universe. What can I tell you? We're going to have a little bit more talking about this towards the end of the program from Ken Holtzhouser. Let's move on, though, now to our book review. Denise is back. You've seen her a couple of times here on The Rift and also over on the weekly Podioplex. She's going to be doing our book reviews here as she talks about Rasputin.
And welcome back to the weekly Podioplex. I'm Denise with your quick flicks. Wait, no, that's not what this is. This is actually a review of a book I've just listened to called Rasputin, Faith, Power, and the Twilight of the Romanovs. It's a nonfiction book, the likes of which I haven't read since high school, which is really sad if you think about it. I say listen to it because that's about the only way that I can actually get any literature into my gray matter these days. I tell everybody I tell everybody on Facebook I'm a 30-year-old grandma. I'm in bed by 9:15 and asleep by 9:30. My body has me down to a timer. No kidding. 9 rolls around and it's all I can do to drag myself to my bed. So really, because I have a 30-minute drive from work from Constanza into Mihakagani-chanu every morning, the Audible subscription that I have is the best thing that I have ever done for myself. $15 a month and I get one book and I get to listen to something that will make me smarter, which is great. It's fun. Okay, so today we're going to talk about Rasputin and the Romanovs and how both brought down the monarchy in Russia and very nearly brought down Russia with them. Firstly, the narrator is great. PJ Auckland is a wonderful narrator with a voice perfectly suited for the material. He sounds like your favorite history professor, which was just awesome. I think had he not sounded like the way he did, I would have given up on the book just because it takes a special kind of narrator to present that information. And I definitely wouldn't have enjoyed the book half as much as I did because of his narration. The book itself, however, presents a really interesting conundrum. It tells you right from the get-go that it's not at all interested in separating Rasputin the man from Rasputin the myth, and it goes on to say that it can't separate the two. So what it does is it takes the middle road. It tells you the myth, and it tells you the man from his daughter's perspective, and his daughter is the best record that we have of Rasputin, and it tries to stay perfectly in the middle. It presents the two pieces of information, and it says, okay, here you go, but it doesn't nudge you in one direction or the other. And, from my personal experience, the only education I ever had on Rasputin was Anastasia, the DreamWorks movie that Don Bluth made ages ago. That was the only way I knew of Rasputin. And then, of course, the song, which is just a lot of fun to sing and to work out to. The author asserts that there is no real ability to separate the two because they've been so intertwined, which is true. And to do so would be to lose something in translation, which I don't know as though it's actually that is perfectly true. And he goes on to say that to really understand Rasputin, you have to understand both myth and man, which is also true. You really do. But it's a good assertion to have, and it does work in a way. But by staying in the middle of the road, the author kind of helps the story to unfold like a little blighted flower. It's like, it looks pretty, but it's not very pretty. So it never really gives you a definitive opinion on Rasputin one way or the other. Was he a sinner or was he a saint? Well, maybe one way or the other, but we're not really going to give you which direction to go in. You could go in both, as the book presents it, or you could form your own opinion, but there's really no backing there for whichever opinion you form. I finished the book really not being fulfilled as a reader. When I put down my phone, which is where my audiobook collection is, I was like, well, that's that. Okay, that's a thing then. If this book was something like Tom Holland's Battle for the West, then the book's presentation would be perfect, because you're taking, if you don't know, it's, his book goes from the Peloponnesian War all the way to the Battle of Thermopylae, and it tells you all of the story in between, and it's a good way to present it. Middle of the road, this is what happened, all of these characters came together, and here's this piece of history. Rasputin, you can do it, but you have to take a stand. I feel like you have to take a stand, and it's a thesis statement. Rasputin was this, and these are the reasons why. Overall, the book is a good starting place. If you want to learn more about Rasputin and the Romanovs, read the book first, or listen to the book. It's a good jumping into what is probably the greatest, most convoluted dynasty that Russia has ever had. And for me, it has the added benefit of making me most interested in Alexandra Fyodorova, who was the empress. So, I give it a solid 3 stars. The narration was the best part of the whole book. And I would recommend it. Again, I would recommend it if you wanted to have a starting place to continue on to explore this Russian dynasty. So that's it for me, and I'll see you guys next time on the weekly Podioplex.
Okay. Denise touches on something that I think is, in general, what a problem we deal with here in our world today, is that we don't get a chance to come to a definitive conclusion about anything because we don't have the whole story. The way she says it here, it's down the middle. It sounds like it's not the whole story, obviously. It's the blending of the facts that as we know it, and the myth as we're told it with the character, the person of Rasputin. The thing is, and frankly, to me, I applaud the author then for not swaying in one direction, trying to guide you to a conclusion. You need to be able to come to the conclusion yourself. And this is the thing I struggle with my students all the time at school, is getting them to come to a conclusion on anything, because to them, they see both sides. And I keep telling them, guys, it's not brain surgery. You just need to have an opinion. And then you need to be able to back that opinion up. And therein lies the problem with the world today. We've got a lot of people with opinions and no facts to back that up. Spilled a little coffee on myself here, even though this thing is half empty. That's weird. That's the big problem. We have opinions, but no facts to back it up. I'm not very knowledgeable on Rasputin, but now I'm curious to read this book. So I think I will check it out. Thank you, Denise. Before we move on, just really quick, I want to say good morning to Paul, Raphael, and Denise, who's actually following us live here on Facebook. Folks, make sure you're heading on over here every Sunday morning. You can either watch us live on chronicrift.com or here on Facebook Live, where you can be part of the show and you can comment as we're going along here. So let's move things along here to our next review. I'm excited about this one also because it's the first time ever in the entire Chronic Rift history, public access show and all, that we've got music. See, it's like old habit saying movie reviewer when we're Chronic Rift. A music reviewer. Let me introduce you to J. Andrew World. As monthly, he'll be joining us here, taking a look at the world of music.
done some comic books, including APB Artists Against Police Brutality. Whenever I'm making my art, I like to listen to music. And sometimes I find that finding the right album can really help me make the right piece of art. I started looking for albums that weren't being played on the radio. Back when I was a freshman in high school and the Doors movie came out, I got the soundtrack and it had a song, Heroin by the Velvet Underground. I had never heard the Velvet Underground before, and I thought, wow, like, why isn't this played on oldie stations? So that led me eventually to a band called Moxie Fruvis, and I really started finding some lots of interesting and weird music that isn't played on the radio or even known by most people. So I have this great collection now of albums, CDs, of stuff that you might not have heard of before. The album we're going to talk about today is a band called Out, and the album is Ridotto. Mark Allen Miller is the driving force behind Out. He is a music producer and musician himself, as well as a friend of mine. And he runs a recording studio called Zone Lab. Out began in 1989, and when he came out, he was hailed as the next Ministry. Ridotto is Out's 9th studio album. It is a more techno-inspired album, which still keeps that Out sound. There's still that throbbing music and the way that his vocals disappear into the soundscape. I asked Mark if there was a story behind the album. There isn't a story per se across Ridotto, but there are themes that emerged while I was writing it. I think mostly it's about emotion. I know that it's a little vague, but I prefer people to get what they personally take away from the lyrics to be their perspective. The album is something you can really easily get lost into. It's great whenever you're doing works of art or writing. Each track blends into the next one without getting monotonous, except for one track, but that was done on purpose, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Mark told me the seeds for the ideas of this album actually started in the early 2000s when I was listening to a lot of Fluke and Laika. I think I really wanted to make an album that one could get lost in the same way that some of their records, OTO and Wherever I Am What Is Missing respectively, has done for me. A couple of highlights from the album include the song Wallflower, which is a Cordelia's Dad song called Upswing originally. If you're not familiar with Cordelia's Dad, they're a folk and punk group that Mark Allen Miller has produced. Track I want to talk about is On Repeat. One of the things that stands out about this track is Mark's humor. The refrain to the song is "It's the same damn thing" over and over again, and it's repeated over and over again ad nauseum, and then the music fades out, fades back in, and then you just keep hearing "It's the same damn thing" over and over again, over and over and over again. It's the same damn thing. Over and over again. Your eyes will stay. Your ears will ring. My personal favorite track on the album is Close Shave. To me, it sounds a bit like New Order or mid-period Depeche Mode. Mark told me the next project he's working on is an album called Deep Sound. The initial premise was setting up randomness and glitching, jittering sounds, and more or less improvising the composition, letting those systems determine what happens from moment to moment. As each overdub is put down, it was influenced by some randomness of the track that were recorded prior. The arrangements took shape as the layers were built up. The full album can be found at Bandcamp. You can also follow Out on Twitter and on Facebook. If you follow him on Twitter, you get the added bonus of watching Mark troll Donald Trump. For further listening, I highly recommend the album Swan Dive. And if you can, find it as the 2-disc set with the bonus album called For Divers Reasons. For Divers Reasons is a remix album of Swan Dive. The next album I really like to recommend is Hasten the Burning with the Breath of Fools. It's a collection of Out's work from 1989 to 1999. Also, the two albums Mark mentioned that was influencing this particular album was OTO by Fluke and Wherever I Am What Is Missing by Laika. For my full interview with Mark Alan Miller, check out the Chronic Rift Facebook page. And next month, I'm going to do one of Mark Alan Miller's favorite albums. Thank you very much.
Okay. Here's the problem when you're doing one of these types of shows alone and you don't have somebody else to bounce ideas off of or what have you, is that when you really like something, you can go on and praise it all you want. And when you don't like something or when you seem like you're negative about something, it seems like you're really coming down on it. Because here's the thing, J. Andrew, I was, listening to the music and frankly, yes, I am the same type of person. When I'm being creative, I like to have music on. Genesis, some of the Star Trek soundtracks, I like having on in the background as I'm writing and what have you. But there's the song over and over. It's the same over and over. I couldn't help but feel that some of the tracks sounded the same over and over. Not that they weren't bad, but I sensed a repetition of a similar theme. I'm curious enough to take a listen. Let's put it that way. And I've gone over to the Facebook page. And I also have to say, anybody who's trolling Donald Trump, aces in my book. Sorry about that, gang. Any of you Trump supporters, but it is what it is. So definitely check them out. And I got to ask one other thing I'm curious about. I meant to ask you about this. Maybe you can answer it on the Chronic Rift page when we post the episode, the audio, or even you can put it on underneath the live one when you get around to watching this. Oh, in fact, you're on right now. Hey, good morning, J. Andrew. Out. You mentioned Cordelia. You mentioned Out. I'm wondering if your friend who heads the band is a fan of Shakespeare. Because, you're saying out. And I'm thinking maybe it's supposed to be out, a little more casual, a little more like Hamlet, or not Hamlet, Macbeth. Ooh. Bad English teacher. And bad fan of Shakespeare because Macbeth is my favorite play. It's the line, out, brief candle, life is but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and now he's rambling no more. Tale told by this idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. So, yeah, definitely take a look, though. I've already liked the page. Like I said, trolling Trump, I'm there. Let's move on here. Keith DeCandido is back with a new TV review, and this time he's taking a look at Jessica Jones.
Hi, this is Keith DeCandido with Couch Potato Salad, a critical look at genre television. All of the Marvel Netflix series, with the exception of The Punisher, who doesn't actually have powers, have done a really good job of showing the ground-level consequences of a world where people have superpowers. Jessica Jones's first season dealt specifically with the same issue that the comic book version did. Jones being possessed by Kilgrave, who uses mind control to make Jones his virtual pet. With Kilgrave having been dispatched, the second season, which debuted on Netflix this month, expands out its focus some. Over the course of the 13 episodes, we see characters dealing with addiction, with responsibility, with morality, with the importance of family, both chosen and biological, with love, and the stupid-ass thing that love makes you do, with loyalty, with revenge, and with manipulation. Kilgrave's ghost hovers over the entire season, and the man himself shows up as a hallucination after Jones accidentally kills someone in the episode aka 3 Lives and Counting. David Tennant is having a grand old time as Jones's memory of Kilgrave, and it's fun to see him again, but I'm glad he was only in the one episode, as the show really needed to be about Jones moving forward. Many have lamented the lack of a strong big bad after Kilgrave, not to mention the Kingpin and Cottonmouth and all the others in Marvel's Netflix series. But honestly, the obsession with story arcs, with servicing the seasonal arc Uber Alles, it's grown tiresome. I honestly think the lack of a big bad is a feature, not a bug. We're still talking about a 13-episode TV show, even if they're all released at once. And while the 13-hour movie approach can work successfully, sometimes, often even, the serial narrative works better as 13 episodes that link together. In particular, this looser approach works very nicely with Jessica Jones's very noir style. And also, big bads aren't always a good thing. Sometimes it's more interesting to have a bunch of small bads instead. And we've got plenty here. There's Price Chang, a competitor to Jones, who's also, it must be said, an idiot. There's Dr. Carl Malice, who created Jones. There's the Killer, who turns out to be someone unexpected. There's Dorothy Walker, who is still able to expertly manipulate her daughter Trish, especially when the erstwhile Patty has fallen back into her drug addict habits. And then there's the prison guard Jones kills. We've even got that noir staple, the red herring, as we get Simpson back, but he's not actually stalking Trish. He's really trying to protect her, and he gets killed for his trouble. And then there's Trish's boyfriend, Griffin Sinclair, who's also someone we're set up to think is evil. Except it turns out he isn't. He's a nice guy. Trish turns down his marriage proposal anyhow, because, in an impressive moment of self-realization, one of the few she has, she realizes that she doesn't love him. She wants to be him. Trish also hooks up with Malcolm, which is a match made in hell. They're both junkies. The only difference is that Malcolm knows he's a junkie and is trying to stop being one, and Trish is completely in denial about being a junkie, even though every behavior she displays shows that she is one. Now she's being manipulated by her mother, again, with Dorothy gaslighting her daughter with as much skill as Kilgrave did last season to Jones, and without even having or needing superpowers to do it. Jones herself struggles with her own demons. From the reputation she's gained since killing Kilgrave, more than one person expects her to start killing bad guys now, to her desire to keep her family together. Many of the characters in this season are trying to get out from under something horrible. Jerry Hogarth is diagnosed with ALS, and her attempts to deal with Lou Gehrig's disease range from pathetic to desperate to empowering. Trish is trying to find out who gave Jones her powers, a quest that sets in motion everything bad that happens this season, and is a nasty lesson in being careful what you wish for. Jones is just trying to be a PI like she always was, and not be a hero, or a vigilante, or a killer, or any of the other things that other people think she should be. Malcolm is just trying to be Jones's associate. Malice is trying to make the world a better place, but doing so in a manner that is most horrific. Jones's new superintendent is a person named Oscar, and as someone whose relationship with Jones develops very amusingly over the course of the season. He's all about keeping partial custody of his son, even if it means breaking the law and risking violating his parole to do it. Whatever works. While this season of Jessica Jones isn't as strong as the first, that's a high bar to clear. It's brilliantly acted, very well written, and everything just looks superb. Krysten Ritter remains letter perfect in the title role, and is in general not a miscast character anywhere. From the returning regulars, Rachel Taylor as Trish, Eka Darville as Malcolm, Carrie-Anne Moss as Hogarth, and Rebecca De Mornay as Dorothy, as well as newcomers, J.R. Ramirez as Oscar, the always reliable John Ventimiglia as Costa, Callum Keith Rennie as Malice, Terry Chen as Chang, Hal Ozen as Griffin, and especially the amazing Janet McTeer as the Killer. I last saw McTeer as Petruchio in a superb all-female production of The Taming of the Shrew here in New York, and both in that play and in this season, she stands out in a superb cast. My only real issue with this season is a similar one I had to The Punisher Season 1, which is that there's very little sense that this is part of a larger universe. There are a couple of very oblique references to the Defenders, as well as Hogarth representing Rand Enterprises, and Eldon Henson shows up for an entertaining cameo as Foggy Nelson, but that's about it. It's only a problem insofar as there are several references in the later episodes to Jones being the only person strong enough to deal with the problem, and, well, she really isn't. Even if you're ignoring what happened in The Defenders and the other Marvel Netflix series, what about Luke Cage? He was an integral part of Season 1 of this very show. They got Tennant back for an episode. Couldn't they have gotten Mike Coulter to come down from Harlem to play Cage for an episode to help out? Failing that, at least a text or a phone call, something from Luke. The lack of acknowledgement of Luke Cage stands out like a sore thumb. That's a minor nit, though. In a season that generally does a fantastic job of digging into its characters and putting them through hell. Some of their own making, some not. Jessica Jones, seasons 1 and 2, are available for streaming on Netflix. Finally, we have Cathode to Joy, where I praise a show in 15 seconds or less. The Alienist on TNT is a fascinating look at the earliest days of psychological profiling of criminals in the 19th century. You should check it out. For the Chronic Rift, this is Keith DeCandido with Couch Potato Salad.
Yes. Yes. I'm getting really sick and tired of the whole overarching story that connects everything together. And you got to follow. I mean, like you said, with Netflix, it shouldn't matter anyway because you're binge watching it anyway. It's not like it's a weekly thing, but it's more egregious in the weekly thing, obviously. In particular, Doctor Who, I'm shaking my finger at you. We don't need the big bad to work our way towards at the end in order to also, and I forget if Keith touched on this, in order to move the characterization along. You don't need that. You could have, as Keith says, mini stories, mini villains, mini threats of the week, what have you, and the character development can still be done naturally and gracefully. So with that said, I am thrilled that, because when I saw the pictures of David Tennant being there, I got nervous that maybe they were going to have, half a season or something with Tennant in it. And I was not looking forward to that because I felt that actually that's what made Jessica Jones one of the weaker ones in terms of the first season. Performances were great, but I thought the whole interplay and the back and forth, because it really became a one-trick pony after a while where he was playing mind games with her. She'd fall for certain things or it just wasn't working. And then everybody else was sacrificed as far as their characterization and their development in order for it to work. So to me, I'm glad. I haven't had a chance to start watching it yet. I don't know what it is. Maybe because I'm a little gun shy after Defenders and Iron Fist, and Punisher, all three of which I wasn't impressed with. The first two I watched to their conclusion. The Punisher I dropped after the second episode. Sorry, call me squeamish, call me whatever. I thought the violence was just way too gratuitous. I get it. It's the Punisher. This is what we're expecting. But to me, I didn't even think the movies actually were that gratuitous compared to that TV show. My wife watched it to the end. She loved it. God bless her, but I couldn't. Before we move on, indulge me a moment here because Mark Allen Miller, who J. Andrew World was talking about in his last review, did comment here, and I wanted to try something. Let's see if it works. Oh, yes, there you go. So I actually could do this along the way. Mark actually came in and responded to my question himself. That, yes, Shakespeare and Robert Frost's poems. So, folks, if you want to comment, see your comments here on Facebook Live. We'll put them up on the screen here. Pretty awesome. Okay, what's that? Oh, that's not cool. Turns out I could actually play around with Mark's comment here if I wanted to and actually edit it. All right. To me, especially if you're doing it live, that's a really bad idea. But anyway, thank you, Mark, for answering my question and filling us in on that. I had a feeling. I mean, it's like out. There earns extra points even more so now for me that I will definitely check your band out some more. Finally, and let me say good morning also now too. We have other people joining us here. Dave and Ken Holtzhouser is here, and we're coming up, Ken, on your commentary here, sort of to bookend what we've been talking about with the Justice League here, as Ken talks about Superman versus CGI.
Today's episode, Superman vs. CGI. The latest in the awkwardly named DC Extended Universe of films has hit Blu-ray, depicting comics' most powerful group of super friends, the Justice League. It's a movie that should be a slam dunk. The mere presence of DC Comics' greatest heroes all together on screen should be any comics fan's dream come true. The problem is, it feels like Warner Brothers were so confident that this is an unmissable gathering, they neglected to add elements like a script or a decent plot. Stuff audiences tend to focus on. Director Zack Snyder left the project due to the tragedy of his daughter's suicide and was replaced at the 11th hour by Joss Whedon for what were called reshoots, but was really a last-ditch effort by Warner Brothers to shift the tone of the DCEU. Unfortunately, they also demanded a runtime under 2 hours, which leaves the movie rushed and disjointed. Performance-wise, Justice League is pretty solid. Jason Momoa is great fun as kind of a bro Aquaman. Ezra Miller offers a different take on the Flash. Ray Fisher shows promise as Cyborg. Newly minted National Treasure Gal Gadot continues a solid run as Wonder Woman, while Ben Affleck looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. Even Mallrats too. The one thing I'd like to single out in this film for analysis is Superman. Or rather, how the DCEU stopped worrying and learned to love the Man of Steel. For better or worse, the shadow of 1978's Superman the movie looms large over all depictions of superheroes in cinema. Superman in that film was an exploration of America's power in a post-Vietnam, post-Watergate world. Superman is depicted as a benevolent angel, certain of morality and cautious in action. It was a depiction that caught on with audiences thanks to Christopher Reeve's earnest performance, but it also papered over the more action-packed depictions like the 1950s TV series. As the long shadow of Superman the movie loomed into the 90s and 2000s, a strange idea started to materialize in pop culture, namely that being Superman is kind of a burden. Three Doors Down, Spin Doctors, and especially Five for Fighting all had massive radio hits with songs lamenting Superman's conflicted sense of duty. 2013's Man of Steel played into this idea, as well as launching the DCEU. In this film, our current Superman, Henry Cavill, finds himself in a world that isn't sure it even wants a Superman. While the movie itself played into the idea of Superman as immigrant in a post-9/11 world, and even dabbled with depictions of young Clark as being on the spectrum, there was never a strong sense that the world really wanted a savior. Even the plot features Superman cleaning up his homeworld's mess. 2016's Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice continued that idea. Only this time, the movie outright states the world doesn't want Superman. It also suggests that if he doesn't want this burden either. Even the tone of the film isn't on his side. Superman and Batman's deeds are met with horror movie music, while Wonder Woman is the only character in that film with a heroic theme and a call to duty. Which brings us back to Justice League. Superman should be the heroic backbone of this world, and I'm happy to say that he finally gets his groove back in Justice League. From the now brighter color palette to the steadfastly heroic dialogue, Superman has finally arrived. Just as Superman the movie is a post-Watergate exploration of America, Justice League suggests that doing the right thing and working with others is the key to the future. A Superman without ego, without doubt. Put here for a reason, and that reason is to do good. Well, that lingers with me longer than the cheap CGI monsters and the flat dialogue. That actually shows a path to the future. It's a path that I hope the DCEU will continue with future releases.
Wow. I don't know. To me, Justice League was just so disappointing because, as I mentioned earlier, we didn't get a build-up to it the way we should have. It was like, well, we have to do this. We've already put out these other movies, and they all aren't even, in any way really connected with you. Like, I didn't feel a sense of movement through the whole thing. That, I know we just said we don't like the whole building story arc, and that's kind of what's been going on now with Marvel as we lead up to the Infinity War. Clearly, that they've been following the example of TV, and they've managed to do it. Because you'd think with movies, hell, it seemed odd years ago to pick up the story of Star Wars with A New Hope and then into Empire Strikes Back when there were so many years in between, and we didn't have the internet for buzz and such back then. Now, we're building this all up here, but DC never got to that. I just felt that Justice League was an opportunity to cash in on something that was the craze. You like superhero movies? We do superheroes. Here's our version of the superhero movie. Again, the one-upsmanship, but with no style, no substance, nothing to it. And the whole thing of, I don't know about necessarily Superman being redeemed here in this movie, because to me, it just seemed like Superman was there to act as like basically, hey, you need Superman in order for the Justice League to work, because without him, the rest of them get their butts kicked. Because they have that, big fight out in the plaza there with him when he's first awakened after his death. I don't know. I'll continue to go. I'll continue to see DC movies. I've already said, though, my disdain with the way they've treated Batman. I really feel, and here's the thing, I say that as someone who actually likes Ben Affleck as Batman. I'm fine with him. I don't have a problem with him at all. I'm just really tired of the whole back and forth. He's in, he's out, he's in, he's out, either because DC says so or because he says so. It's like, dude, commit and be there and be the man. I like the idea of him being a little older and being a little more, it's like Kevin Conroy and Batman Beyond. Maybe not that old, obviously, but I don't know. I'm not happy. I'm not happy with the way DC is running things. And I'm also a little disappointed. When you said Superman versus CGI, I thought maybe we were actually going to talk about how crappy the CGI was in Justice League, which was another, big problem with the whole thing, was that, they really, I don't know. It was very disappointing, the whole thing. But go figure. All I know is I'm looking forward to both Ant-Man and the Wasp and Infinity War coming up, and we'll see where it all goes. It's true though, but and everybody seems to agree on this. Marvel does the movies well, but the TV show's not as good. Although I know there are plenty of people who say Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is great. I stopped watching it. Meanwhile, DC does the TV shows for the most part pretty well. They have their moments. Yeah. Ken here says, and he's right, I think we can agree, that the CGI was atrocious. It was. And not even counting, what's his name's, mustache being digitally removed. Because you want to know something? I actually thought that one was pretty good. That's probably one of the best CGI effects in the whole movie, because I didn't know until someone pointed it out to me afterwards. Like, what did you think of the mustache? I'm like, what are you talking about? Of course, now it gets me thinking maybe we could do that with Cesar Romero on Batman. I know, blasphemy. I know. That's all right. Bring it on. I'm just curious to see what it would look like without the mustache. Mind you, I say that as someone who is loving, seeing that they draw in the mustache on the Batman 66 comic book for DC Comics. Anyway, let's take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to wrap up the show.
Do you like movies? Well, let me make you an offer that you can't refuse. Have you ever found yourself standing at the local Cineplex with that smell of freshly buttered popcorn wafting through your nostrils, wondering if that new Hugh Jackman movie is really worth your time? Or have you ever lamented about that time you spent scouring the vast expanse of the internet for movie and DVD release dates when, let's be honest, you'd rather be leveling up your troll hunter, working on the great American novel, or even watching kitten videos? Oh yes, I said kitten videos. I will do the work for you. All I ask is 15 to 30 minutes of your time every Tuesday. My name is Michael Faulkner, and every Tuesday is showtime at the weekly Podioplex, your audio guide to what's new at the box office, how the top 10 fared over the weekend, and what's coming to your home theater on DVD and Blu-ray. You can find the weekly Podioplex on the Chronic Riff Network at www.chronicriff.com, along with a plethora of other podcasts that explore the culture in pop culture. The weekly Podioplex, brought to you by the Chronic Riff. Thanks for listening. We'll see you at the theater.
That's a wrap!
What the hell is this, the wonderful Billy Flynn?
Just some podcast that's supposed to be geeky, podcasting's Rich Siegfried.
Did you try it?
I'm not going to try it. You try it.
Screw that noise. I'm not going to try it. Hey, Flintstress, let's get Mikey.
Do you mean critically acclaimed comedy rock star Mikey Mason, who hosts the Beer Powered Time Machine podcast?
Yeah, but he won't listen. He hates everything.
Hi, I'm critically acclaimed comedy rock star Mikey Mason. I don't often listen to podcasts, but when I do, make mine Geek Radio Daily.
Hey man, that's a different promo.
Between love and madness lies Geek Radio Daily.
That's kind of accurate.
There are some things money can't buy.
GRD is free online.
Maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's Geek Radio Daily.
We'll take it.
Geek Radio Daily. All the geek without the wait.
GeekRadioDaily.com.
All right, so here I was worried that we were going to go over an hour. Unfortunately, again, this is the problem with solo in review, is that you're just getting my opinion on it. Now, next month when we do this in review episode, Keith says he's going to be with us here live on the show, so this will be good because Keith always has an opinion on something, and we can talk back and forth. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on here on the podcast, on the network, actually, this week. Right now, if you go to the feed, in the audio feed, we have a new episode of Presenting the Transcription feature from Kevin Lauderdale. He's got 2 episodes of Vic and Sadie and Escape on line in his program. In fact, it's interesting. Over here on Facebook, there's a old-time radio group, and they're arguing over whether or not Vic and Sadie is a comedy, because that's how Kevin labeled it. They like to consider it a slice of life program with comedic moments, many of them there anyway. Also later this week, the weekly Podioplex, which you saw the promo for, will be available, as well as an episode of the Batcave podcast, the Shazam ISIS podcast, and the Hornet's Nest, as I continue to release back episodes that have already been released in their own feeds, but making them available here on the network. So next week here on the live show, we're going to be spending the hour with author Chuck Harder. Now, Chuck has written a bunch of books on various aspects of television, and he's coming on to talk about his newest book on the 1960s television show Mr. Novak, and its place in education, because it was set in a school. So, of course, being the teacher, I am very interested in taking a listen, or actually not taking a listen, in talking to him about that. I've been watching some of the episodes. The book is a fascinating read there. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for all the great programming we've got here on the Chronic Rift Network. And make sure you join us here, Facebook Live, on Sunday mornings, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, on the Chronic Rift Facebook page, where you can join in, and just like we did this morning, we can display your commentary. We can have you join in the conversation here as well. So until next time, folks, I want to say thank you very much for listening. Everyone, take care, he says, looking for, here we go. Take care, everybody.